We commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Detroit Rebellion. There's a new stage production that's giving voice to different perspectives and experiences during the uprising. The Matrix Theater Company's original production of Dream Deferred, Detroit 1967, is based on exclusive audio-taped interviews that were conducted after the civil disturbance. A cross-section of people were interviewed in an effort to learn from this tragic chapter in the city's history. These first-person accounts are dramatized in the production. Here to tell us more is Artistic Director Megan Buckley-Ball, along with the show's director, David Wolber, and actor Mike Sandusky. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks for having us.
This is a great iteration of all of the great things that we're doing this year to try to look back 50 years. Tell me about this idea to sort of give voice to the people from that time through sort of modern voices.
Sure. Well, about a year ago, Dr. Nicholas reached out to us at Matrix Theater and said, you know, I have these tapes, I have these audio interviews that I did following the uprising of '67, and I would really like to see them dramatized. I've been sitting on them for a long time, and is that something that you would be interested in doing? And we, of course,
sure,
fell over ourselves trying to say yes faster. And so kind of one by one, he typed them up and sent them our way, and we started to form a script out of it, and it's been such a fantastic learning experience, but also it's the mere breadth of coverage that he was able to get just based on the interviews alone is amazing.
Yeah. At the Free Press, we have been collecting stories that people had during that time through films that they took. A lot of them, the sort of Super 8 films that people were taking in the city at that time. And one of the things that I feel like we learned from that is a lot about what the city was like then, outside the context of the rebellion itself, that it was just a different place. There were a lot more people here, lots of places that are now sort of asleep, I guess, in the city were very much alive. I would imagine that you're seeing at least some of that in the same thing in these audio tapes.
Yeah, one of the things about the audio that we have is that it is all from the perspective of immediately after the rebellion, the riot, the uprising, or whatever their perspective is, mostly through like 75, 74. So it's a very different time. It's not, it doesn't have a modern perspective on it.
Right.
Because I saw it 12th and Claremont at the Redford Theater when they screened it. And I loved the footage, and it was interesting to see or hear the audio, which was interviews that are current. Looking back at
asking
it, right?
people to think back on the films that they're looking at.
And so the perspective that we have here is a little closer to the time. There is a little bit of perspective on what happened, but it is very close to the time, and we've had to remind ourselves, I've been talking to the actors about putting themselves in the space of the Vietnam War going on. You know, after some of the interviews are taking place in the Nixon administration. So it's so it's a very different time and headspace to get into. And it gives an interesting perspective on it. There's 42 interviews in the piece, so 42 different characters, and they all have
a lot.
It's a lot of different perspectives, little points of view. And we have about 45 seats in the theater, so I'm expecting that we'll have 85 to 90 different perspectives in the room on what happened and how people are relating to it.
So you're one of the 42, right?
Yes, I am. Many of the 42.
Right? Are you many of the 42?
Yes.
Talk about what that's like to try to get into that space that he's talking about, where it's 1967, different time in Detroit.
Absolutely, it's very challenging because these people come from the same area and they're experiencing, you know, an event together, but all of them go through different changes. And it's very hard to get in that space because, you know, this person may have a house just like you have a house, but, you know, I'm going through something totally different. So like, how do I, the challenging part was, how do I act this out? You know what I'm saying? Like, my roses died, but mine are still alive. So how do I, you know, convey that to an audience? And so that would be that's the most challenging part to me, but I'm having a lot of fun learning about an event that I've only heard a few things about, you know. Growing up, I think I heard my grandma mention the riots maybe once.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that was it, because nobody else wanted to talk about it.
Right.
So, you know, it's just fun learning all these different facts about all these different people and who helped and what they're going through and everything.
Yeah, yeah. What are some of the things we learn from what we hear on these tapes? If you could, you know, compress that
Right.
2 or 3 minute answer.
One of the biggest things that we learn, I think, is that the thing that we hear kind of over and over again is that there's no way that the list of the dead is limited to 43. As was put out quite often. We hear doctors, we hear nurses, we hear people who owned stores who were just kind of recognizing what was going on and observing what was happening, and every time they say...
That's more.
Absolutely. It's interesting because during the process we actually have been able to match up some of the stories with some of the names of the dead that were listed, first in John Lowell's piece immediately following the uprising, and then again in Our magazine just a couple of weeks ago. So that's been very interesting, and just trying to find those connections and things like that. But also I think that one of the most important things that we've been able to learn from the pieces themselves is kind of how similar things are now to how they were right before.
Wow.
And so that's
sort of frightening, right?
It's terrifying, yeah, it absolutely is. But I think that, you know, that's one of the most important things that we're trying to get out with this show is not necessarily this is how you should think about it, but instead maybe it's time to start thinking about
sort of look around,
observe what's happening now, and what are the steps that need to be taken to avoid repeating history.
See which parts of this maybe are familiar because you can see them.
Truly.
You can see them presently.
Right.
One of the things that the movie 12th and Claremont that I drew out of it after watching it myself was this tremendous sense of sadness that settled over the city after this, and that was one of the universal things. Black people, white people, everyone was sort of moved in a really depressing way because of that. I would imagine that's also pretty evident in the scripts.
I think so. I mean, again, most of the interviews take place in that 5-year period afterwards, and so they're reflecting on and seeing what the loss is. They're coming to terms with what the loss is, and the people leaving the city, you know, because they're already seeing it. There was already some flight before, and it just exponentially worse after that. And so I think that the loss of the city and the neighborhoods and the feeling that which I think is represented in 12th and Claremont pretty well, of what existed before. You see a lot of the loss in people trying to understand what happened. And what I think is interesting is that I'm not sure that we're closer to a lot of answers of what do we do to prevent this kind of thing again, because it's, you know, we've got some 5 basic factors of inequality in unemployment, inequality in education, inequality in housing. You've got police brutality, you know, and those things, they're different now than they were then, but they're still there, and it's still affecting in a big way.
The anger is the other thing that I would imagine that you sort of pick up from these tapes. Talk about trying to sort of channel that anger in a way that that's authentic, but then also sort of appropriate.
Well, the good thing about it is a lot of these interviews, these people aren't angry.
They aren't.
These people, some of these people do speak with a tone of anger. But I have some people who speak with the tone of, well, I learned from this, or there are people who are glad that this happened. So that's the beauty in all of it. You know, everybody's not angry at this event. Everybody learned something different from it.
What about the people you say who were glad about it? Give me an idea of what that felt like.
That was pretty weird, you know. These are people, you know, who felt like they've been treated unfair, and they were fed up, and until this time, they didn't know what else to do. So when this kicked off, they was like, well, this is the answer, so I'm going to jump in, and this is going to get things done.
Do you anticipate at the theater being able to talk with the people who see it about what their reaction is?
Very much, yeah. That's one of the things that we enjoy doing most at Matrix. We like to say that you know, when curtain call is done and you're exiting the theater, we don't like for that to be the end of your experience. We like for that to be the beginning.
Right.
And so we urge people to stick around and talk to each other about their experience. We have a couple of post-show engagement sessions, both with the creators, David, myself, Dr. Nicholas, and Dr. Harvey Reed. As well as one with the cast, just to be able to talk about our experiences and maybe answer any questions about maybe pieces that have been edited out. Dr. Nicholas gave us over 3 hours of coverage, so we've had to, you know, trim it down and make that work. But we love for our audiences to stick around and to call us afterwards or email their thoughts in and you know, be able to share that with others. Well,
and that's the important part of it, is this sort of the lasting learning that comes out of all of these things. All right. Well, glad to have you guys here, and congratulations on the play.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. All right, that's our program for today. Thanks for watching. You can get more information about our guests at AmericanBlackJournal.org, and as always, you can connect with us on Facebook.